Welcome to the Clonestar podcast and to another episode of Voyager, the Greatest Voyages, our special series exploring Star Trek Voyager's most unforgettable two-parters. I'm your host, Jodi Pickens, and today we're entering the neural nodes and nanoprobes of one of Trek's most iconic adversaries, the Borg. But in true Voyager fashion, the story isn't just about assimilation, it's about transformation. Today we're exploring the best of the Borg, where resistance, identity, and individuality collide in unforgettable ways. We'll examine Dark Frontier, where 7 of 9 is torn between reclaiming her humanity and returning to the seductive order of the Collective, and Unimatrix Zero, a hidden rebellion inside the hive mind that asks, is freedom always worth the cost? We'll dive into Seven's evolution, Janeway's boldest gambles, and the timeless Trek question, is individuality a right or a burden? To help us navigate all of this, I am absolutely thrilled to be joined by two of the sharpest minds in science fiction podcasting, Subrina Wood and Tamia Harper from the phenomenal Syfy Sistas. If you haven't tuned in yet, you're missing a vital transmission. The Syfy Sistas bring bold, insightful commentary that fandom has long needed, a show that's unapologetically authentic, empowering, and rooted in the voices of Black women who have shaped, challenged, and redefined what it means to be a sci-fi fan. So let's assimilate some truth, explore some ethics, and boldly go into the best of the Borg, where resistance isn't futile, it's complicated. Ladies, thank you for being here.
Oh,
thank you.
Mia,
wow.
we gotta be
Can
on
you
it, girl.
see the Black girl blushing? I'm like, oh.
All true. All true and from the heart.
And whoop again.
Thanks for having us, Jodi.
Oh, happy. Truly a thrill and an honor to have you both. So thank you. I'm going to start us off right off the bat with a question.
Okay.
If the Borg offered you peace, purpose, and no more pain, would you say yes?
No, flat out, nah.
No?
I'm here to tell you, because those are some ugly uniforms. I would not be in it. That is like not my style at all.
I'm saying my hair. What happened to my hair?
You know, you saw what
How
they did.
come like the Borg nanoprobes can't keep hair?
Nah,
right?
That's not even happening. No beauty, no fun.
No
they
fashion.
call them drones for a reason.
It's all green and black. Green is a horrible color on anybody's skin.
Clumping around. Oh, my heels would all be gone. I couldn't deal. I just could not deal.
And they never lay down to sleep or rest.
Right.
No.
They're always up on their
why
feet.
Are we standing right?
Can't they have a recliner? Something.
Something.
Seriously.
Get me back in the neonatal chamber for a minute. You find me in there snoozing.
And I just wonder, like, if the Borg are so amazing and they're assimilating everybody's greatest parts into themselves,
right.
Why do they walk like zombies? Why are they so slow? Why can they not catch a single out there? They can't catch nobody.
I got notes about
All you got to do is run.
All you got to do is run.
All you got to do is run.
I'm ready to talk about some Borg need to speed it up, snap it up, level up, Borg.
But to take your question seriously, like,
sure. Oh, okay.
Oh,
that. No, I wouldn't. It could be. It can sound. Anything can be spun. So what the Borg need outside of the Queen is a PR person, so come join the Borg,
right.
Hey, you
Seven
no
tried
cancer.
to tell her. She said, maybe you should use that instead of resistance is futile. She told the Queen to her face, you need another line.
She never held back when she kind of detached from the Borg.
Annika was like, listen, you need to explain this.
We have words to share.
But what about you? Would you be tempted?
It's that lack of individuality that it comes down to. I think that's such a unique characteristic of our species, and I just think I don't do well just falling into following the norms or the standards. I like people who break free a little bit. So
yeah.
I don't know. And also
hallmark of Terrans. So
right,
we'll get more to that for sure.
Definitely. Well, the first two-parter we're going to talk about is Dark Frontier. So I'm just going to give a little summary of the episode for our listeners. When Voyager attempts to steal technology from the Borg, 7 of 9 is lured back to the Collective by the Borg Queen. The mission becomes a battle, not just for tech, but for Seven's very soul. Janeway must risk her crew to keep one of them from being lost forever. Good old Janeway. So why do you think Seven was so vulnerable to the Queen's manipulation in this episode? What kind of triggered her vulnerability to say, you know what, I'm going back? Because those were the words she gave Janeway.
I think Seven truly wanted to belong to something. You got to go back and think, this was a little 4-year-old girl who was all by herself on that ship forever. And then she gets taken in and she becomes a Borg and she's in this collective. So now she's got friends, she can hear voices and all this stuff. She gets snapped out of that and she's on Voyager. And for example, she hears Paris make that crack about the drones right at the beginning, like, oh, what do you get? They're all just drones. They could all die. She wasn't really a part of that crew. And I think when she heard the voice to come on back to, the Queen, she was like, I might have to, because that's all she knew. That's what she knew.
Yeah. I have a different read.
Of course you do.
Yeah. Because I got the sense during that time that she was really not, the only reason that she was going back was to save Voyager. And I don't think that she wanted to really rejoin the Collective, but she also did not want to be the cause of harm for these people. She was very much, she said, like, Voyager is my collective now. And I could see that, at least I think Jerry Ryan portrayed that really well when she was talking to the captain. Like, she's like, she didn't want to say, she couldn't let on to the Queen that, hey, I'm trying to save you guys. Like, she couldn't let on to the Queen that, I'm telling them that you're in touch with me. I think she just really saw.
You mean to Janeway? She couldn't let on to Janeway.
She couldn't let on, right? But I think Janeway. The Queen was still in communication with her at that time.
Right.
So, so she was really cagey about what she was saying to Janeway and how she was saying it to Janeway. And I really think that she did it out of a noble cause. Like, like, if anybody's got to go, I'll go. I've already lived this life, like I'm barely out of it,
Right.
And I don't want these people to have to suffer for it. I don't think she was going because she was tempted to go back. I think she very much, even though she was still having problems adjusting, I think she knew which reality she wanted to live in and would choose for herself.
I still think it was a little bit of a siren song for her, though. I mean, like, she knew she needed to tie herself to the mast, but she wanted to hear what was being said, but she wasn't going, but she was still kind of like, I don't know. But yeah, I mean, she definitely was going to sacrifice herself. She was, but me, I'm a B'Elanna fan. I was with B'Elanna from the minute.
Well, yeah, but I still
part of the crew out. B'Elanna was ready to just.
I know, but I still don't think that goes to her motives, though.
No, I agree with you.
I agree with you about, like, being resentful when Seven's character was introduced, and taking away those plot lines for B'Elanna. Like, I did not want her either. Like, I was like, I don't need this. Why do we need another person? We don't need another person.
Oh, I was talking about B'Elanna in that episode. Yeah, okay. I was. Yeah. When Jerry Ryan came in, we were both like, really? But we got it. We knew why.
Yeah, but I mean, I think for her motives, that I don't know. What do you think, Jodi?
I think you're both right to an extent because I think they both play into it. Janeway in that episode early on, she was very focused on getting the technology she wanted from the Borg and really exploring that at all costs. I mean, they made that from the get-go. The start of that episode is Voyager attacking one of the Borg, vessels to try and rescue technology. And then after they recouped some of that tech, Seven discovers that she has these information on, information from the Borg, and she wants to explore that further. And then Janeway pushes her to explore further her parents' records, Starfleet logs, and which Seven's not real keen on wanting to kind of go back to those moments. I mean, which that's understandable, right? There's a traumatic past for her to open back up. And I think you couple that with that happening, that pressure from Janeway, and then all of a sudden she's hearing from the Borg Queen. She does want to protect her crew. She has a connection to them, but there's a familiarity to this collective. This is the only thing she'd really known in her life before. So I think they both play really strongly into it, but I agree with what you both said that, Jerry, I think Jerry Ryan was playing that, conflict so well. And it really resonated. And I think it's also what makes this two-part episode so unique is that from the beginning, we're seeing our Voyager crew they're the aggressor. They're the ones, searching and
Janeway
going.
was feeling like she was doing her Clint Eastwood. Like,
yeah, she was, right?
I feel lucky. I'm like, whoa, my girl is like, she's saying, I feel lucky today. Let's go get I was like, oh, here we go. Saddle up.
Yeah. So it was a different vibe right from the get-go, I think, too.
Yeah.
So.
But what I love about this, the first part of this episode, and you were talking about the logs that Janeway was making 7 of 9 read, leave it to Neelix to have like just a scene and make it turn around. I mean, when he started talking about all he had was the picture of his mother, like I was feeling Seven, like I don't want to read that. I can understand why you don't want to read it. I don't know why Captain's trying to make you read this mess. And then when Neelix said that one little thing to her, I just went, oh my God, to have all of that, from your parents, that would be like so crazy. Like I have a little example. Like my father wrote letters to my mother for 4 years after the war to get her to come to this country to marry him. And to this day, we've never found those letters. Oh, I would do anything to find those letters. So, I thought of that when Neelix said that to Seven. I was like, yeah, you need to read that stuff just because, it was just a really poignant moment that I love this, the secondary characters in Voyager that come in and just say this stuff, just like, even the Naomi Wildman, here she come. She had her little scene too, and I was like, "Oh man, this show is doing it."
Yeah.
It's interesting because Neelix, I think, often has just those very short, quick moments where he instantly puts a perspective on the situation at hand, and that's a great example of it because we don't think about that. Like, there was a gift to that side of having all those logs and that information and perspective from her parents and from her childhood pre-Borg. And we lose that quick because it's so, Borg focused, in the moment focused. But yeah, that's special. I have to ask, what does Dark Frontier reveal about the lingering pull of the collective? I mean, we see it so pronounced in this episode. It's, what is the basis of the episode, really. But this seems to be a thing. We saw it in TNG with Picard. We see it with Seven. I mean, even Hugh in TNG and Borg, there was that pull to go back and protect and still go back to it. So does Dark Frontier offer us any insight into that pull of the collective?
Well, in the later shows, I think it was the Picard series, when the two of them came together, 7 of 9 and Locutus, and he said it's a daily fight. One of them said it's a daily fight to not hear. I think it was to not hear the voices or to not get the pull. It's like once they had embedded those things in you, and she couldn't get some of them out. I think they got all of Picard's out, but she still had some of the hardware in. And I think that was another problem for her, that she could not truly separate from them. She really was physically still part Borg. So I think that had a lot to do with her comeback to them, and the others just seemed to. You never got that individual link that they mentioned. Seemed like it never truly disappeared, even though you didn't want to hear it.
I think that one of it shows the really truly seductive nature of the Borg, and that's where the original Borg Queens was so effective, in bringing that out. And I missed it. I missed that in the Voyager Borg Queen portrayal. I feel like, on a very personal note, like I liken this to recovery. Like I'm a person who's in recovery, right? So I see my recovery as a daily process, right? And sometimes it whispers to you, like I'm going down in my neighborhood. I live in a neighborhood in the city where there's a lot of bars and restaurants and outdoor dining and stuff. There's a lot going on, and I'm driving past and you see everybody outside eating outside, and my head thinks like, oh, they're all drinking and having a good time. Like I'm not having a good time in my life, right? Number one, but number two, it's a very seductive. It romanticizes things, and I think that there's a comfort, what we were alluding to before. There's a comfort in the devil, and so I always like, now I look at the Borg like in a totally different way when it comes to that, because every day is something. Like I'm with Picard on that one, like, yeah, it's something that you need to silence, that you have to work on, every day. And so, I think that that's what makes the Borg so insidious and so frightening, even though they got a little defanged by Voyager, but that's still what makes them such a persistent threat.
You said that very poignantly. I think, there's a comfort in the devil that and are familiar with. And I think that is very much what the vibe you get between, these people who are considered ex-Borg, and yet they still have that nag of the collective in some way. Now, I do think in this episode, in that the Borg Queen was being very intentional in trying to reach Seven and in her process, but it doesn't make the allure of it any less from Seven's perspective, even if she was doing it, going back to the collective out of the good of protecting Voyager and the crew.
Yeah. And the Queen dropped that one line where she said, "Do you really think we let you take them?" I mean, she was basically saying that Seven was a Manchurian candidate, like,
right.
You were just like the Trojan horse. We just put you back in there. We let this happen because we were going to come and get you back. And I was like, wait, what? What did she say?
Yeah, I thought that was an interesting twist they put on there.
Ooh, do we believe her? Do you believe her? Do you think she
I wouldn't put anything past that woman.
I mean, I can't, part of me does believe her because, I mean, Voyager beating the Borg all the time, like, really?
Right.
Really? I mean, but, then Voyager learned a lot, and then they could. But in the beginning, I don't know.
It did feel a little bit like a trap at times, didn't it?
Yeah.
Baiting them in off and on.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because you knew Janeway
Come
would
into
snap.
my parlor, said the spider to the fly.
Yes. Yes. Boy, that should be the tagline to the Borg right there.
For real.
Do you think Seven chooses independence, or is she rescuing herself from herself? Do you think
is she choosing independence?
So,
or is she
when she makes that choice to go back to the Borg, is that an act of independence, or is she trying to rescue herself from becoming that part human, that person that she isn't familiar with yet. You know, trying to step away from what Janeway's trying to create for her.
I think it's just sometimes it could be trying to take the easier path, right? Not really understanding the consequences necessarily, but knowing that the work is hard and not really wanting to do it. You know, like
Right?
I think Seven like looked at like all this like becoming human business as just like this is a lot of work. Like nobody told me I'd be having to do all this, right? Like if I was gonna stay with you guys, I was happy to be a drone and stay here. Like I wasn't really happy, but this is a lot, you know? And I think that can really just be so overwhelming sometimes. You know, but it also was at the same time an act of independence. She made the choice, you know, and I believe so.
Right. She had both of her, you know, mentor figures, mother figures, or, you know, captains, queens, whatever you want to call them, telling her to do something, and she chose the voice she wanted to hear.
Even if it was, go ahead.
I mean, she chose, I don't know that again, I disagree. I don't know that she wanted to hear the Queen's voice necessarily.
No, I mean, she wanted to hear Janeway's.
Oh, okay.
She said, you know, I that's an order. And she said, yes, ma'am. You know, like I was like, okay, yeah, snap it, put it down. She was like, I'm crew now. I know which collective I'm in. I was like, that's right, 7 and 9. You know which song you want to belong to.
And then I think it was an act of independence, you know, at least from my perspective, that she made that decision. You know, she went and said, I'm going to protect the crew, like we talked about earlier, and I'm going to stay here and see what I can do from being back in this collective. And I think it's interesting, too, how she faces the Borg Queen on that first, you know, meeting there in this episode, because she's like, I mean, they're nose to nose, and the Borg Queen's trying to work every angle she can with Seven, and Seven is still just completely in charge of herself in that moment. And you don't see the doubt creep in until I think the Borg Queen tells her to, you know, take a moment. You must be tired. We've made a special regeneration place for you.
What are your thoughts?
Which I was like, Seven, don't go in there. Don't go in there.
I was saying that too. I thought something was going to happen.
You can't trust anything that the board. You should have brought your own regeneration. To be like, nah, that's okay. I'll build my own. I got it rolled up right here in my pack. You know?
You're gonna go camping. You got to sleep over. You're gonna take your own sleeping bag. Right.
Doctor could have hooked up something for her. Come on.
We needed that portable regenerator they used later on when Legion. Janeway, I think, is like we've talked about, special in this episode too, because I'm wondering how far does she go to protect her crew?
Well,
she puts them at risk
a big time.
Big time.
But they were, well, you know, and it was funny because it's always, I love those Janeway Chakotay moments where, you know, she's like, I need you on this one. You're going to be with me on that one. And he's like, well, no, this is crazy. And he wasn't buying it on this one, right? He was
he was not with her on this one.
And she was like, I've made my decision. We're going to do this. And then he's like, I'll inform the crew. So he was not with it. And I was like, she's crazy, because you had the thing she wanted was going to take 15 years off the journey. Like, it wasn't like life and death. It wasn't like anybody was missing yet. You know, it was like, okay, we got to do this really crazy, dangerous shit to maybe get this thing to work so that we could take 15 years off the journey. It was like, oh, I don't know if that's worth all that, but, you know, but, you know, she was determined that she has that bug in her that she got them stuck out there. She's had so many other times when there was other technology that she couldn't get, that they wouldn't give her, that was going to take years off. So this was like a thing that she could not say no to.
No, yeah, because who knew if they would ever get a chance to be around any other technology like that ever again? You know, like you can't assume that there's going to be another opportunity. She's the boss, and she's like, yeah, no, we got to get this is the mission.
This is the mission.
I don't care how much you don't want to do it. It is the mission.
The mission is to get home, and this is to get us home 15 years later. That's what we're out here doing.
I feel like Janeway always had this internal goal list from the minute they entered the Delta Quadrant, and one of them was to like get that crew home safely and as quickly as possible. And I think this was an episode, a 2-part episode, where she was pushing that envelope of the balance of risk or reward. And,
right. Yeah. That's the thing that always makes her doubt herself or almost go over that line. If it's something that's going to get them home sooner, she's ready to. I don't know. I could maybe do that.
Yeah. Could I live with her in the pale moonlight moments? You know, can she live with it? Like accepting, you know, that there might probably be crew deaths, you know, on the mission and everything. And like, can I deal with this? Can I handle this? You know, it like you said, like that Chakotay was like, I'm not really on board with this, but I'm gonna follow orders. I'm still gonna, you know, do what's required of me. But yeah, I think, and Janeway still is like, okay, that's fine. You know, just carry on. I'm in charge, so this is what we're doing. And
I could have a clip reel of all of those conversations of this. I love them. I love them going off on each other. Like,
me too.
Are you with me or are you on my side? And then what did he say? He said he was going to be with her. I mean, maybe it was the second one. And at one point he said no. And then she said, well, I guess I really am alone.
Yeah.
I was like,
It's just their dynamic in that regard is pretty consistent throughout the series, I think.
Yeah.
And, it, you know, obviously it makes their relationship interesting too, because I think even like in TNG, I think about a lot because there were very few times where Riker and Picard were, you know, in that amount of tension between them are blatant, just like, yeah, I don't agree with you, but I'm still gonna. I mean, Riker hardly ever confronted Picard at that level.
Exactly.
Yeah, no,
Riker was not that type of first officer. Like Janeway asked for a different type of first officer.
Yes.
You know, she specifically had the person around her who was not going to yes ma'am all the time, you know, that would challenge her.
Yeah. And I think that Maquis element, right? There's that too, that I mean, she needed him in a leadership position to make sure they survived. But at the same time, he's going to have a lot of points of issue with the Starfleet way because, you know, he was fighting for that to go away. Essentially, it's fun. I enjoy them.
And then, you know, what was really even better was when they continued it with Chakotay and Paris. So now Paris is like, well, I'm the first officer. Now he's going to give him some lip. And he goes, well, I learned from the best. I was like, okay. All right. I love it. I love it. I said, the Voyager crew, that number one officer is going to be like, are you sure you want to do this?
Yeah.
I don't think so, sir.
It's a testament to their writing. I think, you know, the writers really got it right when it came to that tension.
Saw you, Brandon. We saw you, Brandon. We saw all that.
Yep.
And we thank you, right?
Yep.
Yeah. How does the Borg Queen weaponize love, identity, and purpose? I think it's in every way, but I'm curious what you think.
I'm like, how do we narrow that down? I mean, those are her weapons, you know, that she's using with Seven. She hits her with the, you know, remember what it was like when you were here? Remember how good it is? You know, your parents are here.
Yeah, right. It was like, oh my God.
Oh my God. When she hit her with the parents being here, I was like, Oh, that's some dirty, nasty stuff, girl.
It's
Stroking her
almost
chin, her cheek. I was like, you
right.
need to get off of me.
Mm-hmm.
It's all very human, though, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
And she's very
extremely.
much, yeah, appealing to that human side that Seven still is struggling with. But that's exactly where the Borg Queen came at her.
Well, and it's very humanly manipulative too.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, like the Borg Queen, she's learned a lot, from Locutus and others that she's assimilated.
Right.
So she knew how to use those tactics very well against her. It's
Mhm.
like you think you have like what is it, the grandmother or mom that thrives on guilt, makes you
Right.
do stuff out of guilt, like the Borg Queen, like they ain't got nothing on the Borg Queen when it comes
Mm-hmm.
to manipulation.
But the thing about the Borg Queen is that she, for me, she flip flopped so much with what she was telling her. One minute she was like, "We want you because you are individual." Then she was like, lose your humanity and
Yeah.
don't do this. And I was just confused. It's like, what do you want me to
Yeah.
do right now? She said, we need you because I know you will resist. And then when she resists, she gets, put down. And I'm sort of like, are you taking notes somewhere? Like, what is going on with why you're saying one thing to her, then you're pulling back, and then you're saying something else to her? Because she had me completely confused as to what she really wanted, from Seven. Lose the individuality or lose the humanity? Are you saying those are two different things? Lose the empathy, lose this, but still keep Annika? I don't know what she wanted her to do. It was just really confusing. I said, you say you don't want a drone, but you want me to act like a drone.
Mm-hmm.
I always felt like that tactic was a manipulation technique, right? Like,
Mm-hmm.
let's
Mm,
cause some internal chaos in there, where she isn't sure how to play this. And I
okay.
think
All right.
that's how I've
Yep.
always read it. It just felt very. It was just a tactic to confuse and
I totally agree with you, Jody.
yeah,
And because then you get this so wound up and anxious, and like eventually they'll break,
right,
and do and they will comply, you
yeah,
know.
yeah, nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. I think she was intentional with that, and I think that that technique she was using on Seven is also why the Borg Queen, as the challenge with Voyager continued throughout the series, that's why she and Janeway could never figure out Janeway. She never knew how Janeway was going to come at her because I think Janeway was just as unpredictable at times as the Borg Queen could be, and I
Mm-hmm.
think she was kind of went toe to toe in that way. Um, do you think in a world driven by conformity, can individuality be truly a freeing thing?
You,
Oh,
you mean?
right.
Do you think it has a chance?
Yeah.
Mm.
Well, I'll tell you in my own personal life, I am a CPA. If you want to talk about a conforming place to be and work, that is the profession. I mean, we
Mhm.
all had to look alike, dress alike, it's time to even walk alike. You could lose your mind. But they really wanted a certain look, a type. When you walked in, you knew you
Mhm.
were the auditor, the CPA. And I was so not that person that I was always getting called to HR about something I was doing that was annoying people. Not lying. From my nails to my hair to my clothes to whatever,
Mhm.
I was called into HR about something, something, something. I mean, I was like, okay, whatever. And to the point that, I didn't care because I knew I was really good. It was like, well, until you start talking about my work,
Yeah.
I'm wearing these daggone red nails. I really don't care if it is annoying you. But it was like annoying people. Like people
Yeah.
got annoyed because I had a very expensive pen and they thought it was show office that I had this pen that someone had given me for my graduation. And I was a pen freak. And I was supposed to use the company pens that had our names on it. I was like, I cannot comply.
The level of petty. is staggering.
Please. You want to talk about, like, I used to be a big 8 accountant. It was just like, you never even saw anything like, I think the only thing worse is maybe working for the phone company. But, yeah, so it's hard to do it, but you can do it. But you will pay for it.
Yeah.
You will pay for it.
Yeah. I mean, I think let me know when we're going to dovetail into Unimatrix Zero, because
we're almost there. So.
Yeah, because I kind of want to save that question for then, because I think it really applies.
Yeah, we can come back to it. I don't disagree with you. I think I think it's a question, especially in Voyager, because we do obviously have so much Borg presence, and Seven's struggle as, trying to find that balance and that individuality, and how difficult that is for her. And I think we see it, like I said, throughout Voyager. But I do think, I don't know, I think that's a big question for Trek and for us here now, how much, individuality gets pointed out pretty quickly as being something different and not accepted because it doesn't fit somebody's definition of what is normal or conformative. I mean, we talked about it a little bit when, Seven walks in on Paris and Harry saying, they're just Borg drones. It's no big deal that they, all exploded and went away. And Seven's like, but I was a Borg drone.
Right. And how much do I love Harry for being like, hello, that's not even right. Right. Thank you, Harry.
Yeah. Harry, the most experienced and naive of the crew, is always the voice of reason at times.
Right.
So
right.
I
that's
kind
not
of
right.
Yeah. He put people in check.
Another little thing about individuality, or when B'Elanna went in and read Seven's personal files, privacy of an individual,
right,
and she just walked all over it. She was like, well, she's not crew, she's not here. And Janeway had a checker. Here,
and she's right. She didn't include her as a crew. She barely included her as a human.
She was
yeah, and that's very relevant to how people are, these days. How it always in human history, how we other so very easily, so we can rationalize our abysmal treatment of each other. Excuse me.
In a time when we're getting our phones checked at the border, you're like, whoa, what?
Right. We could have a whole entire episode on the fact that Seven's quarters was in Cargo Bay 2.
Yes.
Right? I mean, like, where's they're a high-functioning Starfleet, cutting-edge technology, starship, and they couldn't adapt her alcove to quarters where she had some privacy, and instead, people are coming in there to, Neelix had to come in and find something he had stowed away, and
they must have had some empty crew quarters because they lost a whole bunch of crew. And there was crew people dying all the time. So that there was at least one quarter. And if they probably had enough that they could knock down the wall between two and make it a nice big old
They made a garden for Cass. They gave her.
You see what I'm saying? But that was a cargo bay also.
Yeah, so they turned it into a little place. They could have put up some curtains or something for Seven.
Right. People are always walking in. She never had a moment's rest.
No, she really didn't.
Before we jump into Unimatrix, I want to just ask, if you were Janeway, what would you have done differently in this two-parter?
Right. I'm not sure how much. I know, right? Like, I'm not sure how much I would have done differently, except for I might not have pushed Seven so hard to read those journals. She wasn't ready.
She wasn't ready.
It was very clear that she wasn't ready. And Janeway was like, "This is a thing you got to do," and and I thought, even when I was watching it, and even when I was watching it originally, when it first aired, I thought that was really kind of out of character. It was the one thing about this episode that I felt the writers or producers or directors or somebody shoehorning that in. It didn't feel natural to Janeway's character. Like saying like, yes, I have these here for you, or maybe at a later episode, like, hey, guess what it's time to do, and I'll be right here for you with support. Like if you need it, like something like that. It felt aggressive and it
Yeah.
felt intrusive.
It would have been interesting if she had given it to Chakotay. Somebody else was going to read it.
Yeah.
And then maybe, she felt a little differently because somebody else was reading it and maybe then took it over, forced down her throat. And I felt like, oh, wow, don't make her do that. She's still hurt and raw from that. But
right.
I wouldn't have taken her on the away mission. I would have left her right on Voyager.
I think in this Dark Frontier two-parter, Janeway, we see Janeway and she's a little bit tunnel visioned. Like she desperately wants to get this technology, like to move their voyage, cut their voyage down. And I think she was pushing any button she could to get the advantage, and pushing Seven to read that stuff from her parents was. Yeah, okay, I agree. It was too far, but I think it just played into where Janeway's mind was. It was out of character. We hadn't seen Janeway so focused that she, lost sight of how these actions might impact each individual. And I think that that's what sets this episode apart, because we see all these characters in a little bit of a different perspective.
Right, they're all being a little like about Seven. How they're reacting to Seven.
Yeah. It's a good one. It's one that definitely continues 30 years later to still raise questions. So,
but I'm so glad that you asked us to do the show, because it forced me to rewatch this episode. I hadn't seen it in many years, and I forgot that there's some really fantastic moments in this episode. It's overall a very 2 episodes, like very strong, two-parter. And I felt like, because both halves of the two-parter were equally strong. A lot is great and fantastic, and the second part is like, wah, wah. You're like, I don't even know how that happened, Yeah. So, I'm glad you did.
Yeah, it is a telling story. It's compelling, and it's critical to Voyager's story arc overall, and it's a big moment for the crew. But we'll move on. Unimatrix Zero, that's a big one too. So, and more Borg. Let me just give a little episode summary to this one. So, in Unimatrix Zero, we have some drones dream of being free. And Unimatrix Zero is a hidden realm within the collective where certain Borg remember who they once were. As the Queen moves to destroy it, Janeway allies with this underground resistance, launching one of the boldest sabotage missions in Trek history. So what does Unimatrix Zero suggest about the persistence of identity? Because there's a large segment of the collective that has found itself in this Unimatrix Zero realm where they're seeing themselves as the individual that they were before they were assimilated by the Borg.
But were there really... Okay, watching it again, you know me, I always saw something.
I live for it.
When they said because like the reason why the thing formed was like habita yada yada. I was like, all right, I'll buy it for $1, but let's just go with the story.
There's a recessive trait.
That's only 1 in a million, wasn't it?
It was
1 in 100,000 or something like that.
Some big number.
It was some crazy huge number, because there was only like 1 or 2 on a cube. But so it was like, it wasn't, there were a lot of them in the place, but because there were a lot of Borg, but it was kind of like, there weren't that many to, start the resistance. Like when the guy, it was like, I kind of wondered if they had, the math wasn't mathing to me. The math wasn't mathing. And I was like, well, y'all gonna be in trouble. And so I was saying to myself, okay, so Seven must have that gene because she's in there.
Mm-hmm.
And all these other people, they're in there. And I started to think to myself, I wondered if Picard had it. Do Terrans have it? Because they are so highly resistant. Because, in the first one that we watched, Dark Matter, was it
Dark
Dark Matter?
Frontier?
I'm getting confused now which
Dark
one
Frontier.
it was. They were talking about going and getting, like, why they wanted to get the humans, why they wanted to go back to Earth. And I was like, this is just a badge of honor because you all went down there to Wolf 359, got your butts kicked, and you're still mad because when they described humans, they were like, low cranium, something else was wrong with them. This was there, da da da. Like there were 4 things that they were like below par, below par, below par, below par, but they kicked our asses. What's going on here? So I'm like thinking, because we all have the recessive gene, that's why, because we are just the ones that are gonna resist. We can keep our humanity no matter what you do. We're going to keep our humanity. I mean, it's the same reason why the Telosians didn't want the Earthers either. When they were in the menagerie, they were like, y'all are too much. We don't even want to try to keep you here. I was like, we all got the gene, okay? It's like, that's what I came up with. I was like, oh no, I don't know about the rest of you individuals, but I know back on Terra Firma, we got the gene.
I like that. I like that a lot. I think
that's
that works.
right. That's the Subrina Wood spin on why Wolf 359 happened and why they couldn't get us. They were like, it was irritating to the Borg that they could not take out Earth.
They're just trying to swat us away, like that pesky
all
dance
these
that
other
we
ones,
were.
they just go in there, take over, it's done. And they came to Earth and they were like, these subpar people. Let me go get a Locutus and a 7 and 9. I still can't get them.
They couldn't.
I think.
Love it.
But to your question.
Right. That has nothing to do with her question.
Like, she did ask a question.
She did. Go ahead and answer it to me. I was just going off.
Yeah. Now we know how you feel. Thank you. We'll be expecting your article next week.
Well, let me get to the Vulcan. Wait till I get to the Vulcans in the next one. This one. Go ahead.
I don't know. I mean, like, I don't know how much it does say about the persistence of identity because it's so, like, again, the math wasn't mathing. But I like the idea. I mean, because like you look at people who've been brainwashed or people, or people who've been in cults that come out, and there is something to be said. I mean, like inside we are who we are. We grow and we adapt, and we learn and we change, but we're still fundamentally the same person. I think it's more about the spirit of, as we referred to in the other question that I wanted to table until now, the individuality. I mean, identity, yes, but like me being, like, I can exist as, I've been many different Tamias in my life, but I still have, what's the word? Words are leaving me tonight and I don't know why. Like my vocabulary is failing me. I still have a sense of self, right?
Yeah.
No matter which iteration of Tamia I am, I'm self-determining. I think that is the seed that will never die. Like, right? That self-determination. I feel like that cannot be quashed. So, I think it can be quashed, but give it a chance to grow. Just give it a little inch, and it will. It'll take root again, and it'll be sprouting before you know it. And I feel like that. It's the idea of it, the philosophy of it is what is so dangerous to the Borg. So it outside of the numbers, right? And like, who cared? Like physically, like, could they start a rebellion? Like they could start one. Could it be quashed easily? But the reason that it must be quashed is just like what's happening in our world today, where we need to rewrite history, where people are trying to ban books and change education and change our, the history that people are learning at our national parks and battlefields, etc., because the ideas are insidious. So you can plant that idea into a Borg drone, whether they still feel like an individual self or not.
Yeah.
There's the yearning to be an individual self. And, that's is just like how things have always been framed, like in the Cold War, or just how we learned, like, communism versus capitalism. You can't, you give people that little seed of it, and it's going to grow. It's the ideas that are so powerful and dangerous, and this is what, like, is terrifying to the Borg Queen.
Mm-hmm.
I think the other thing in this is, I know we didn't really touch on it, but it's also leadership, which is really important, because the way, okay, I'm saying the math isn't mathing, but at the end, when they were forming that resistance, I could see that the ones who were leading it, the ones who had the brains and everything, they may have been the gene recessive one.
Mm-hmm.
But once the stuff was in the air or whatever Janeway did, the others now could follow.
Yeah.
Even if they didn't have the gene, they were ready to man the ship and follow and listen. They were like, you know what? Okay, it's coming back to me now. I couldn't do it without, I had to wait till the stuff was in the central matrix, whatever they did.
Right.
But, it got to them. And now they could follow. They could make up their own mind whether they were going to follow or not this leader that had the recessive gene, that was hearing it before, anything happened. So that would make the numbers jive.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I thought it was really interesting that they now gave up that dream world.
They were willing to.
Well, yeah.
Had
Right?
to.
Yeah.
It had to survive, but also because, like, it was just the tip of the iceberg. It really only represented it was a representation of what they were actually trying to obtain.
Right.
There
And it
it
was
is.
only for the few of them.
Right.
Yes. Very small amount of individuals compared to what the Borg had at their
Right.
disposal.
Of what the resistance could free.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that was deep. That was really deep.
It's true, though. I like, what you both were saying and implying there is that it's a ripple effect, how a resistance
Mhm.
takes hold. You throw that stone in the water and it just goes and goes and goes.
Yep.
And
Yeah.
it doesn't stop, really, until it's fueling itself in a way. It
Mhm.
becomes the wave. And boy, that says a lot about, a lot about history. It says a lot about now in current
Mhm.
events.
Yeah.
But I think individuality is important, and it's a necessary part of who we are, and
Mhm.
we need it to thrive.
Yeah.
Just how it is. It's how it should be, anyway.
I want to go back to the
Yeah.
I want
Go
to go
ahead.
back to the beginning of the episode, because again, Harry Kim was the one that pointed out this was a distress call. I loved it when he said that.
Right?
He's gonna
Harry.
back 7 of 9 up
That's right.
again.
Like, hello, doesn't the protocol account for it? It is a distress call. Doesn't matter who it's coming from. Like,
Let me point it out to all you here in this ready room that got more rank than me. We're supposed to.
which was also pointed out. He's like, I didn't see a box on my chair with a pip in it. I was like, you're right, Harry. You should have been had a box on your
Right.
chair.
And let me point out protocol for you now, even though I don't have anything. So that's just my,
Harry always found his voice in moments.
Harry's gonna say something. I just had only a little bit in this episode, but boy, he was key.
And isn't it was wonderful to see Harry Kim reappear during Lower Decks in their final season, and where they're just making fun of the pips and the rank and all of that. That was just pinnacle Harry Kimisms all over the place. I loved it.
It was so good.
It is.
He is one of my favorite characters on that show. I love a Harry episode, for real.
Do you think that the drones that are living in the Unimatrix, right? That is it a dream world, or is it an act of respite? Like, is it like them wanting something more, or is it a place where they just go to escape their life as a drone?
Yeah, it's very metaphysical.
Both.
I think, yeah.
Yeah, I think, I mean, like, I mean, of course, it's certainly, I mean, the fact that they were there at all was already an act of resistance, you know, or the fact that they stayed there and kept coming back, like some of them, the fact that they were searching to retain memories, like it evolved into something more. I think it was respite at first.
Yeah. But it became, I mean, they were forming relationships.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right?
Year long, for years.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And, there was an interlink frequency. I mean, it was a spatial place, like subspace or something, they were going somewhere.
Right.
So, I don't know.
They were keeping it hidden from the Queen.
Right.
Like there had to be an acknowledgement that it existed, right?
On some level, they knew better. Like, this is ours and it's our safe space and we can't let other people know about it, and like, so it was all like, maybe that was enough though for a while, right? Until, until they got shown like, you could have a lot more, you can do a lot more with this. Again, planting that seed. And
that was Janeway planting that seed a little bit too.
Right.
Well,
sometimes
maybe a lot
you need
of it.
somebody from the outside.
Here she comes.
Yeah.
Talking smack,
causing trouble,
interfering with Prime Directive out the window,
getting people killed, but not for the dangerous mission.
What else you could do? Like, just leave us alone. This is our life.
Like, we're good, we're okay. Like, but you could have a lot more. You might have to fight for it. Like, what do you mean fight exactly?
Right? Because this was
a
new.
Distress call. I'm answering the distress call.
This was a new perspective on the Borg for us, wasn't it? That they were doing something outside of the norm of the collective that we knew, that they were then willing to form a resistance and try and gain their individuality, not just for themselves in the reality in the real world, but for more people that were in, still being drones. Like, they wanted to bring more people in. So I think that was an interesting perspective for us to see the Borg suddenly like, well, they're not only living in this kind of dreamlike state where they're seeing themselves as they were before, but now they want to move forward with this and expand this and regain this for more than just themselves. Very human.
I was debating while I was rewatching it. Like, I kept thinking about how the Borg became less scary during Voyager, right? And less of a like, oh, it's the Borg. Like, it used to be like when you first started watching, it was like, oh my God, it's the Borg. Like, and then as time wore on, you're like, yeah, it's the Borg. We beat them before, we can beat them again. I was like,
See, that's what I was saying. They needed to level up. I mean, it was like, first of all, I think in Next Gen, the thing about the Borg that made them so terrifying was that, they were coming for humanity. There was no doubt about it. They were trying to get us, and we would then realize that they were going to get taken out, but it looked like there was nothing that could stop them. And then by the time we get to Voyager, it's not so much that the Borg Queen is coming after humanity, even though she said that in dark frontier. But by the time we get to Unimatrix, this is just personal between her and Janeway. She just want to get this bitch. You know, she's like, you know what? It's you and me.
Right.
She forgot all about humanity. Whatever. I'm getting her. And what I'm saying about stepping up, like this drove me crazy about this. Whenever they go on the ship, it's just walking around with the phaser rifles, and they're like, the Borg aren't going to look at us until they know we're a threat. It's like, as soon as you see Janeway's face on the ship, it's a threat. Like, if you saw that uniform come on the ship.
You're telling me that no Borg can recognize, that's a Federation
uniform?
What the what? Like, we just walking around like they dumbasses, like we're only focusing on this thing. Like,
I was like, that's when I said, the Borg ain't all that, because y'all can't really even recognize me. It wasn't until Janeway was looking in the camera that she's like, oh, I see a threat on grid something. So I was like, you slow thing.
How in the hell does the Borg Queen not know when Janeway and Torres and Tuvok are quote unquote assimilated? How she not know instantly that they're using a neurosuppressant? She knows all these. Oh, I hear her voice. I hear this voice. It's a new drone. Oh, I just got another one added. It takes 20 minutes before she goes, I can't hear them. Why can't I hear them? Are you kidding me? I'm sorry. Like, I just wanted to. Okay.
The only explanation for that is that the doctor must have really mixed up some good serum to block that,
to feel it.
It was Borg technology, so he was like, "I'm gonna put your own stuff on."
I mean, but not only are they able to maintain their own thoughts, but it's fooling the Borg Queen.
Everybody.
Right.
And
I
don't get that. I don't get that. But here's what killed me about this episode. And I know this is not the question, but I just have to say it. I just have to say it. It's the two-parter. The first part was fantastic to me, but it would have been so much stronger if there was that final line, if they had left out that final line of dialogue after Janeway and Torres and Tuvok get assimilated. It should have just been dun dun cut and like Locutus. We had to wait a whole season, right? But no, Chakotay, they give Chakotay the line that says, "So far, so good." What? I didn't want to know that yet, man. You just ruined all the fun. Now I know they're not really assimilated. The whole thing. Why would you even waste the time of assimilating and putting them in all that makeup if we didn't think that at least one of their asses wasn't coming back next season?
Right.
But you're going to
leave that line for
whole right. Leave it for. I mean, it's a simple editing choice. I cannot believe. I'm vexed over it. I'm super vexed, and it was why at the time I was like, "Oh, this ain't," like I was mad. I was mad. Like I was like, "That's not a cliffhanger." Season.
No, they gave it away.
I already know.
Gave it away.
Right. So I didn't care when the next season started. I'm like, whatever. They're gonna figure out a way to get out of it. Like, I'm gonna watch it anyway, but I didn't care as much.
It was just let Tamia to make up. That's what all it was.
Yeah, we could have spent that entire summer speculating.
Right.
If they didn't all make it, who was going to be assimilated, or would they all be? We didn't know. We could have not known. Instead, we did know. We did know.
All we needed to see was them assimilated, then fade to black. Cut it.
Right. Give us the Law and Order dun-duns, and we're done. We're out of there.
Right. And I have a lot of Unimatrix Zero irks me. It's like I gotta say it honestly. This episode really irks the world out of me.
Take us so long. Like other thing too is like when they get in someplace and they just start walking around looking. I'm like, will you step on it? Like, let's go.
There's so many.
Too casual.
Here's the other thing that just stays right in line with my Vulcans can't trust them, can't kill them. because you knew the one that was going to turn fast, was going to lose it first, was going to be Tuvok. I said, why did you bring Tuvok with you when you know his brain don't work like anybody else's?
Right.
And if somebody's going to start hearing voices first, it's going to be T. So, like, what are you doing? And I'm telling you, if there's one time, and I've said it before and I've said it since, if there's anybody I want watching my back, it's a Klingon. That's the one you put behind you.
Not this one, though. In this episode.
Oh, my boy, what more? He was there. He was there. He was talking shit at the beginning, but when you need him, he came through.
All the dumbest lines throughout the whole. He was
they
just
always
dumb.
do that to Klingons, especially if it's a black man under there playing it. You know they're going to give him some stupid lines. But
yes, every single one. There were so many stupid lines.
They just gave him all and I was Klingon like, lines, but the one that came through at the end was going to be him.
Stupid lines to somebody else, please. Like the kid, maybe. Like I don't know.
The other black alien. I'm like, what? Like, what is going on here?
But, and then Seven's literally caught in a trap,
right?
and swooning. Stop.
I know. That you know what, and that was it too with Axum and her. I could like. Are we going to like a bad K-drama now? Are we going to a bad K-drama? What in the world? The man says, "Oh, we used to have a relationship." She gets all crazy and then says, "I'm 7 of 9," and runs out of the place. I'm like, really?
Feelings.
I don't want to go back. I'm like, I would have ran back in there. What's wrong with you, girl? But I just thought, like, oh God.
But I loved the first part. I loved part 1.
Yes,
I loved part 1. Part 2 just fell apart on me. Like I was just like, I don't understand you guys. But it did. But Jodi, I got it. Shut up for a second.
No, please don't. This is outstanding. I love everything.
You did like bring up. I mean, like it does bring up great points. You know.
Yeah.
But it does. I mean, there's a lot philosophically to chew on, at least from part 1.
Yes.
You know, part 2. No.
Yeah, part 2 got a little Gilligan's Island.
Like they were. There was almost. They were almost jumping a shark.
Yeah.
In some parts, almost. You know.
Yeah.
Like
yes.
But I will never forgive them for Seven walking in the woods and getting caught up in a damn trap and then swooning like,
unbelievable. Ugh. The other thing I couldn't understand is, okay, the Borg, again, level up. They're out there. They got these ocular implants. They just told Seven they were going to put something on her thing so to make her see everything. Now they've got 3 red lights going everywhere. They can't see Axum and Seven sitting behind the rock. Okay, first of all.
Right. They can see through everything else, but they not behind the rock.
Can't see them behind the rock.
We just saw them see everybody through the bushes,
everything,
through the leaves, everything. Like
can't see these two sitting there. I'm like, okay. Then my boy is walking along in the woods. He's got all kinds of implants, stuff on his eye. Everything is going red, bump. He trips on a tripwire. I'm like, for real? It's not even invisible. It's like a freaking philodendron leaf going across. I was like, what the hell are you trying to tell me? I just said, all right, whatever. Okay, we're just going to try to get to the end of the episode. Let's just go.
Right.
What's going to happen? How are you going to get out of here?
Okay, but then here's my thing. Why would the Borg Queen think that making Janeway watch her destroy her Borg cubes would upset Janeway? Janeway's like, I'm trying to kill all y'all
anyway.
All y'all.
Yes.
I was back with Paris. It's just drones. I was like, yeah, we got another one. I was like, do it, Queen.
I remember watching that in the beginning when the stuff first came out and going like,
right.
You know?
Why would that make me stop? I'm like, I don't care.
Oh my God. Oh, okay. So much with this episode.
It is though about I think at the core, I hope at the core that it was more about our crew understanding the individuality that existed in mass across the Borg Collective, millions upon millions. I hope that's why all of these shenanigans that happened in Unimatrix Part 2 had a purpose. At least that's what I've told myself. If that was, I'm going to have to talk to the writers. Maybe that's what I'm going to have to do.
It tried. It tried.
It just got.
I mean, there was some
got
good scenes. There were some good scenes.
moments. We had some moments.
Yeah.
Yes, we did.
But I wasn't scared.
No, not in the least.
I do think I have to go back to, like, we had the issue with Picard and Locutus, and he gets rescued and deborgified, But then we get Hugh in Iborg during TNG. And it's the first time I feel as a viewer and even as our crew there in TNG that they realized, oh, there's an individual there.
Yes.
And it's not just Picard and Locutus, it's all of these drones are individuals. Yes. And that is such a key episode for me. It's my favorite TNG one, simply because without Hugh, this Borg storyline in Voyager would have never happened. I don't think that we would have seen 7 of 9.
Ooh, yeah.
I don't think.
Agreed.
I don't know what Janeway's main foe would have been in the Delta Quadrant. So it just, I think
couldn't have been Kazons.
No, oh my gosh. That's a whole other episode for us to talk about. Goodness.
But yeah, I agree with you, Jodi. I think that Iborg was a huge.
It's pivotal.
It is pivotal, and I'm thinking about how important that concept is, like in an abstract way, right? That we know the Borg are individuals. There's an individual. There was an individual underneath all these implants inside. Do we spend a lot of time trying to re-individualize everybody, or do we just accept what they are now and face them as the enemy that they are? I'm saying face it, but if you get an opportunity like 7, maybe
I'll try to save you if I can, but
right. Yeah. But but then again, like I mean, as a viewer, like for fun and entertainment, even though it's philosophical, I don't care to know the Borg in an individual way. I think like if you're going to defang your big baddie, you got to have another big baddie right behind here waiting to take its place, because now you've lost your major conflict provider in your storylines, right? Like, your outside exertion. Like, so who's going to take the place of that? Because I really feel like, the purpose of the Borg before, I mean, I say that, but then I also say that, the Borg is a great vehicle for exploring these questions, are a great vehicle,
It's interesting because in DS9, the big baddie wasn't the Borg. It was the Dominion.
I was just thinking that earlier today, yes.
Which I think is probably even scarier than the Borg.
Yes.
Right. But the same concept, though.
Very same concept.
Collective.
Even have a female queen.
Right.
You've got a Manchurian candidate type with Odo, who's there on our side, but is he? And the thing about the Dominion is that they're not trying to assimilate you; they're trying to kill you. Right. They are trying to just annihilate you. Right. So there was no coming back from. You're either fighting this, or you're dead. It's like there's no two ways about it. And not only did they come for Earth, they came for Beta, they came for Vulcan, they came for Romulus, they came for all of it. And I was like, I don't know what you're talking about the Borg, but whoa! I was like, the Gamma Quadrant is the place you need to be scared.
Right. Yeah. And I think it was interesting too that in Voyager they gave the Borg species 8472, right? Yes. So we learned that the Borg wasn't the biggest and the baddest.
Yes.
That they even had a foe. So I do think that we have we get a very unique perspective on the Borg in Voyager. Yeah. And that we see that they are fallible and they can be defeated. And I think that just invigorated Janeway more to
take them on.
Yeah. It's why in Dark Frontier she's going after the technology to try and help Voyager. She's trying to help set these people free that are in the collective through Unimatrix Zero. because that it helps her cause.
Right.
Yeah.
So there is a little bit of selfishness as a captain, to protect her crew and move her crew towards her ultimate goal of getting them home. But can she do that while taking out what at the time was, in her perspective, the Federation's biggest enemy, which was the Borg? Because she didn't know about the Dominion at that time.
No.
She didn't know that they were all facing that.
Right.
So,
and she's willing to, give them the virus that, Picard wouldn't do, even though it wouldn't kill them like the one that they had. But I was like, Picard, you could have had this whole thing done if you would just.
That's what
Admiral Nachea was right. Okay, you want to say Janeway was right? Admiral Nachea was right. You should have just killed them all right then and there.
Right.
I have a question. Okay, this is a head scratcher for me. I noticed it in this rewatch, and I never noticed it before, and I want to know, am I seeing things, or you guys agree with me? So when the Borg Queen told 7 of 9 that she wanted her to come and watch the assimilation, they didn't need to be there, but they wanted her to watch it. Was that planet Ichib's planet? Were they Ichib's people? They had the same nose and face of Ichib.
I did not see that. I would have to go back.
I watched it again, and I was like, "That's his home world."
I think that's like me not paying that close of attention
because she let those 4 go.
I do that too.
There was someone that got away, and they were on that other planet where they had made Ichib to be another one to send to the Borg.
Right.
And I was like, wait a minute, those are the same type of people that Ichib was. They had that nose ridge. I don't know. Go back and watch it.
I'm going to.
Listening, people, please, in the comments,
check it.
Let me know.
Let us know.
Is that Ichib's home planet that they destroyed?
Now, we do know that Trek was notorious for reusing
the
prosthetics
and makeup, and to mix and match aliens, right? So there is that option.
Go back and look. Too. That looked like his people.
Going to because I'm remembering, and I'm like, oh, now I gotta take another look. That's good. Good I Spy.
I love my aliens. I'm telling you, Voyager has the best aliens.
Voyager has a lot of good aliens.
Yes. Yeah. They even had Herodians in the Unimatrix Zero.
Right?
Yeah, I thought that was interesting.
Herodian in there. I was like, what?
Yeah.
Right? That's an aggressive one right there. Goodness.
Oh, they scared me.
Right. That's another one we talked about that with Derek Tyler Attico. He and I chatted about those 2-parters that involved the Herodians. That was fun. So 7 had a pretty significant role in this. And do you think does she reconcile her past trauma with helping others find liberation? Like, her trauma to be liberated from the Borg. Does that trigger, you think, for her in this episode?
Go ahead, Subrina. I see you.
I was going to say, I think it makes her regenerate easier, but, I don't know, because she lost her love. I mean, she wasn't going to see him anymore, but she gave up a lot. But everybody gave up a lot, and I think it was like one good punch. She got to give one good punch, and I don't think it reconciled all of her past trauma at any idea, but I'm sure it made her feel a little better to be the one that answered the distress call, and even though it was a high cost, got this resistance going.
Yeah, I agree.
It is an interesting place for her, I think, as she's at this stage come pretty far in her exploration of becoming more human and evolving in that way. But I do think it is a bit of a healing moment in a way for her, because she's allowing all these other drones the opportunity to in some way experience what she already has. And even though it was traumatic and continues to be impactful and hard to pursue, but I think she realized the importance of individuality and wanted to share that. And I think we kind of see that still in Picard when we see 7 and 9 in return as, you know, the Ranger and someone who's out there been fighting for people too.
True.
So I don't know.
She becomes a resistance fighter pretty much.
Right?
I think it's a huge moment in her growth for sure.
Yeah.
You know, because she is learning to think this is, you know, and that's part of what has been her determining part of her becoming more human, you know, and to really lay her life down in this way for other people, I feel like is a really big moment. Like now, whether it heals those old wounds or not,
Right.
you know, debatable. I'm sure, like Subrina said, I'm sure it helps.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, because like it helps you to deal with it and to replace that hurt, to let that hurt transmute into something positive. You know, you take that hurt and you grow it like mulch. You know,
Yeah.
you know,
You got to keep feeding it, right?
you feed it, you fertilize other stuff with it, you know. So I think it's a big deal in her character development.
Yeah, I agree. And I think, you know, we always have seen 7 as someone who wanted to make up for the wrong that she did as a Borg drone. You know, like all the life she took and assimilated as a drone. That was a recurring theme with her, that she would say, like, I wanted to, you know, bring these people out of stasis and whatever that episode was. And, you know, I just wanted to, you know, give them back their lives. That kind of action from her was very human, but what didn't always work out. And I think in Unimatrix Zero, she makes a lot of sacrifice, as you both said, but it does, in the end, makes a big difference and impacts the Borg and, in a way, helps Voyager.
Yeah.
Right, and the crew. So it's a powerful episode for 7. I agree. I agree. So how do we see the Borg? Are they victims? Are they villains? Are they something in between? All of the above?
Well, I think the species that were assimilated were victims.
Yes.
I think the Borg are villains. You know, I think now there's a, you know, with the seed planted, you know, there's a chance that some of them can become, like, not be victims anymore, but they're still they're a threat regardless of how they came to be. Even though they, you know, even though they were like taken against their will and assimilated against their will, they are still en masse a threat, you know, with one desire, you know, which is assimilation.
I was surprised when the Borg Queen said that she had been another species, because she said the line, when you know the joy of disembodiment. Like, she was the only one that, like, had absolutely no body. Like, and I always thought that she was like an original Borg, you know? And then she makes this statement that she used to be some other race too. And I was like, well, then who are the Borg? Like, who started this mess in the first place? You know, and who's in control? Like, why are you the queen? So, but that whole idea of not having anybody and just having, you know, her brainstem was just, okay, what is going on? And then saying like that is like the coolest thing that could ever happen to you. I'm going like, oh, this chick here.
Yeah.
She's bought in. She is fully in, right?
She's evil. She is the Borg. And no, we got to go. We got to lickety split out of here with her.
My own headcanon is that losing 7 was being like primed to become the Borg Queen. I think that was always, you know, she was the right hand Borg drone to the Borg Queen, and losing 7 is why the Borg Queen herself became so obsessed with getting her back, because she has invested a lot of her own resources.
I like that idea, you know, because I mean, we know that the way I've always thought of the Borg Queen was like, there have been successive Borg queens.
Yeah,
There
yeah.
wasn't just the one, the way I thought of it in Picard, but also because it helps because we had successive actresses play the role,
Right, right.
and it makes more sense. And just like a queen bee, they don't live forever. And then there's another queen that takes over,
Right.
the
And
hive.
yeah. And I think maybe that was a point to the Borg, is that they needed multiple queens to, cover the entire universe, right? They can't just
Yeah.
all be, dependent on one. At least I would hope so. That could get
Yeah,
scary.
because at the end, didn't she blow up her own cube
Yeah.
that she was on?
She hit self-destruct.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And here's another time B'Elanna got on my nerves.
Okay.
Everybody's, Paris is counting down. They're coming out of the transwarp thing, and she's like, "We got 5 seconds." Blah blah blah. And Chakotay says, "Shoot a spread of torpedoes at the thing." And B'Elanna goes, "Commander."
Right.
I was like, bitch, just fire the torpedo. Don't
Right?
ask him why.
Like, why would they even
Push
have
the
her
button.
question? Like, first of all, it's not in B'Elanna's nature to question that type of order at
You should
all.
be the first one to know why we're going to shoot the
Right.
thing.
B'Elanna would have been like, okay, boop, hit the button.
Right.
Like they needed a suspense moment there, but it didn't work.
Oh,
They picked the wrong character for that moment.
Yeah, they sure did. Mhm.
They needed an explanatory line of dialogue. But he could have given it before that. Hey, let's shoot off the thing so it'll close the thaw. And then she shoots it. But it's like, no, she's going to say like, huh?
Oh,
Lana.
that should have been maybe Harry would have questioned.
Harry would have questioned for
Yeah.
sure. Tom might have questioned as well.
That's true. Yeah. They had a little bit more, they were more vested in the crew members as family than I think B'Elanna was at that point in the series. I think, maybe.
Well, he said as soon as they came out,
Yeah.
shoot it.
Oh, right.
It wasn't going to be, he was wait
That's
till the
right.
shuttle comes out and then shoot the spread. And she's
Right.
like, what? Why? Amanda, I'm like, girl, if you don't hit that button,
Tuvok
popping off.
He would hit it. Yeah, I know.
We're taking you off. We're taking you off. Photon torpedoes. Okay, you're not being on this no more.
Back to engineering, B'Elanna.
Back to engineering for you. Go back downstairs.
We've talked
here's
about
my other
this.
head
Go.
scratcher. My other head scratcher.
Go. I love it. This is what I wanted. Please.
And I always thought, why didn't? Well, there were people on Voyager who did not wear the uniform and were not part of the crew, like Neelix, like Cass.
I get it.
But they didn't do things in engineering or on the bridge or on this other stuff. And I was like, is it really that you want her in that costume, that you are not going to put her in
a uniform
because she is taking duty, she is taking rotation, she is doing stuff, she's up there
she
in
is
the engine.
A member of the crew.
Right. So, when B'Elanna was like, well, she isn't really a crew, I was like, well, yeah, you're right, because she's not wearing the uniform that they made you Marquis put on and gave you a different little pin because just to make sure you knew you weren't Federation. I was like, oh, wow. So, you could have come up with a third one for, Borg or for 7 and 9, but it always got me that she was not, and they even give her astrophysics, they give her the other lab, and like you say, they give her a little lab where she doesn't have to work with anybody else. She's got her own little room. I mean, she was just like all by herself doing her little thing. I'm like, this is privilege. This is privilege. I'm seeing privilege.
This is a bunch of men who are like, no, we need the TNA to sell the show, which was like,
we need the blonde-haired, blue-eyed lady to have all her stuff that she got. I was like, wow.
Like they put Troy in a uniform. They can, or a semblance of a uniform.
Yes,
they could have put her in a. It gets on my nerves all the time. And I was actually thinking about it today.
Okay.
As well, because it just smacks you in the face. Like, as good as our showrunners were at the time, and it just makes you realize how far we've come, but B, what we what we've lived through and what we continue, like some men made this decision to have this woman in these ridiculous looking outfits the whole time, just so they could appeal to a younger male audience.
When it didn't make no sense that she
and
was
it did
that.
like as if they needed it. It's Star Trek. First of all, they're gonna get it, like, and the rest of us are out here. Hello, I'm watching, and I don't wear cat suits, and like, I mean, it was just the whole male gaze.
Yes.
It's the whole male gaze and the whole male power system that leads you to this friggin' ridiculous ass decision to have this chick not in a goddamn uniform for the whole series. Doesn't make any damn sense.
And it would have been such a powerful episode for her to earn the uniform.
Oh yeah, you had a story right there.
I'm still crying when the Prodigy kids got their uniforms.
Right? Take that actress out of that girdle, like that corset thing that they had her in. I mean, none of the things that Jerry had to wear were comfortable. They were, I mean, it was ridiculous.
And in heels.
Yeah.
In tall heels.
Tall heels. I have two things I have to say about that. I will always say, and listeners have heard me say this before, but Jeri Ryan she performed that character beyond the catsuit. She didn't need the catsuit because she created a character
because she's a fabulous actress. She's talented.
Fabulous. So talented.
Everything that we've talked about in this episode of this podcast, with all the acting that she did not need to be wearing that thing.
No. And the other thing I will say is, the 90s didn't help our cause here. Like that era. And I always go back to Nana Visitor's book, The Women of Trek, that she put out last year.
Open a channel.
Open a channel. Yeah. So she did such a great job of showcasing each decade and how that culture, society's gaze of that decade influenced Trek and influenced the women of Trek and how they were treated within the industry and portrayed on the show. And there isn't a decade she talks about where the sexuality of women isn't exploited in some way. And it's a sad truth of the entertainment world, unfortunately. But
yeah, absolutely.
But that takes me right back to Jerry didn't need the cat suit.
Right.
She never needed a cat suit. Ever, ever, ever. Not one damn second did she ever need a cat suit.
No.
And I know the heat is coming out of me because I feel, this is in one of those ways that my franchise betrayed me, in a very personal way. Not only are you putting this woman in a cat suit, but you're also setting her up as a paragon of beauty and what beauty is. And this beauty is a white woman with blonde hair and light eyes. And that just X'd out a lot of the population, not just those of us who aren't white. Absolutely. It's something that it works on my nerves. And that, it took me years to disentangle those feelings from my feelings for her as an actress.
Yeah.
Right.
And the role, and the character, so there's a lot of resentment out here amongst other women towards her that has nothing to do with her or her ability. And it's all caused by these external forces that decided to present her in the ways that they did.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. And I'll tell you what I've learned, in my short time of being deep in the fandom is there's a younger audience, younger generations that first were introduced to Seven of Nine through Picard. And
right.
And
right.
and what I love about that is they got to see Jeri Ryan just perform the character.
Yeah.
Without that stigma. And that encouraged them to go back and watch Voyager. And they're rewatching it, and they refer to Seven of Nine on Voyager as Baby Seven, because
Baby Seven.
I know it kills me, but it's you think about it, and you're like, okay, this works because she's young, she's trying to rediscover who she is. She's growing up on Voyager. I'm like, it makes sense. I would have never, because my perspective was, I'm like, I think 2 years younger than Jeri Ryan. So I was looking at that going, oh, she's such a great character and she's so good in this role. Why the cat suit? Like it was maddening. And so I agree with you, but I love that there's this younger generation that has a different perspective on it. Yes. Do they see the cat suit as ridiculous and the heels running up and down the corridors? Come on, ridiculous. Yeah. But they identify it as, oh, she's growing. She's becoming something that we know.
That's so cool. Yeah, she did get some justice. I think Sister Fran always refers to 7 of 9 as Barbie Borg.
Yeah. Well,
and that's what she was.
Right. I mean, they put her in the alcove. That could have been the Barbie box, right?
Yep. Literally. Right.
Kept her in a storage room in the back.
Gave her literally unrealistic, unhuman dimensions.
Yes.
With the waist size and everything. Yeah.
Right.
So
I'm just grateful we had Jeri Ryan play that role because we got a much deeper character than I think was ever intended.
Absolutely. I'm like, go ahead, sister girl.
Yes,
she knew what she was doing. She brought some depth to her.
Right. Mm-hmm. And hopefully Hollywood will continue to evolve and bring us more diversity in characters and portrayals of women because, well, we deserve that in Trek. And that's what the future should look like.
Yes. Well said.
Well, I don't know. Sometimes it comes out right. I don't know. Oh, well, this has been fantastic. This has been beyond what I had hoped for. So I thank you both for that. This has been great. I hope we can get together again and talk about all the things Star Trek because there's a lot more out there to discover and break down and laugh about too. So
anytime. I mean, thank you so much, Jodi, for asking us to be on the show with you. I mean, it's just a pleasure and an honor. And I'll say it on camera too. Like, thank you, Jodi, for being a hardcore supporter of the Syfy Sistas forever and a day. Like you've been there with us through thick and thin, girl. And, we're just happy to see you doing well. And the show is great. This show is fantastic.
Well, we've got a good team here on Clonestar. And I will tell everybody, if you're not tuning into Syfy Sistas, you're missing out because this is a great perspective for the fandom, and we need more of it. So please carry on, ladies, because it's important and it's fantastic. And
thank you
so much.
You're not going to get rid of me, so
good. I bet we better not. We better not.
Well, we've reached the final node of the Best of the Borg, another powerful entry in Voyager, the Greatest Voyages. Endless thanks to you both, Subrina and Tamia, because the Syfy Sisters are something that must be seen, and you two are powerful voices, so carry on. This exploration of identity, resistance, and liberation from the Hive there's a lot of questions yet to be answered, but thank you for being a part of it. Voyager just didn't confront the Borg. It redefined in what it means to reclaim your voice from the noise of conformity. Whether you're drawn to Seven's evolution or Janeway's relentless defiance, these episodes remind us individuality is resistance. If you love this discussion, support the signal. Subscribe to the Clonestar podcast, drop a review, and find us on YouTube to keep the journey going. Your engagement powers the mission. One share, one story, and one star at a time. Until next transmission, stay curious, stay free, and remember, you don't have to be a part of the collective to boldly go. I'm Jodi Pickens for the Clonestar podcast. Live long and prosper.
Bye.